Hey everyone, it is Sean and Dave here from Saturday Morning Cartoons. We want to thank the following people for going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons and supporting our show. So a huge thank you to Derek Haynes,
Dr. Jason Woods,
Jamal Newman,
Melanie Harker,
Allison Keene,
the one and only Sean Paul Ellis,
and the amazing Dave Trumbore.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, it might sound kind of weird that we are thanking some familiar people and ourselves in this list, but we want to let you listeners out there know that we are not just asking you to support us through Patreon. We are actually putting our hard-earned dollars into the show as well. So we just want to say thank you to those who have supported, and for anyone who can't but would like to help out the show in some way, feel free to share our Patreon page within your social media circles. It would really help a lot.
So thank you guys. We appreciate you going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons to sponsor and support our podcast. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from Planet Z, I'll be your co-host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, our very own 11, it's Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, buddy?
David, I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I gotta tell you, does me calling you an 11, is that like a derogatory term? Am I cool? Are you cool with that?
No, it is a derogatory term.
You're not okay
it's
with
it's a pejorative term. I'm Japanese.
Got it.
For the instance
I never knew.
this actual show.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, if you had, when you occupy somebody, you should kind of know a little bit maybe about their history and their culture.
Yikes, I am currently occupying Sean, apparently, and I know nothing of his culture, but that's for another show entirely.
Hey, guess what? Occupying the seat next to me is Doctor of Pop Culture Narrative, Dr. Shannon Davies Mechas, the first time on the show. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi there, long-time listener, first-time participant.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're thrilled to have you here because this is our last of the Mecha March Madness episodes. That means we're not only going to pit two of the most beloved mecha anime series against each other, we are going to count down the top 8, and we're going to give you our rankings from this entire month. So we're going to see who's upset by the end of the night, who's feeling victorious, and which one is the king of all mecha. So it's going to be an interesting night, and I'm very happy that you could join us for this very special episode.
Oh, man. Shannon is riveted.
I'm looking at my notes.
Oh, okay.
She's prepping. She's
I'm trying to remember the slogans from 1984. I'm trying to make sure that I have them pulled up.
Oh, wow.
Because they're about to come up.
Oh, good.
It's going to be a
So-
deep cut here, guys.
Yes.
So brace yourself for that.
Do we need to have read 1984 before this?
No. That's why I have notes.
Okay, great.
I feel like we're living it, so I don't think anybody needs to even read it, even though it is like a bestseller now, so feel free to go on out and buy yourself a copy. So the first series we're talking about tonight is Code Geass, and you may pronounce that in a number of different ways, but that's what we're going to stick with tonight. So Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, often referred to as simply Code Geass, is a Japanese anime series created by Sunrise, directed by Goro Taniguchi, and written by Ichiro Okauchi, with original character designs by manga authors Clamp. Code Geass first ran in Japan from 2006 to 2007. Bandai Entertainment also licensed the franchise for English release in 2007, airing the TV series on Adult Swim, so it's probably where you saw it if you are listening to us in the States. The series will be receiving a new anime titled Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection, along with a compilation film trilogy in 2017 that will recap the events from both seasons of the anime series. Released to critical acclaim, the TV anime series has been well received in Japan, selling over 1 million DVD and Blu-ray disc volumes. Both seasons have won several awards, and critics have praised the series for its large audience appeal, as well as the cross-conflict shown among the main characters and the moral questions presented. How's that for a history?
Man.
Yeah,
Oof.
it's deep stuff.
Jeez.
They're really pumping up Code Geass here.
I'm going to help them in a minute.
Uh-oh. All right, so what's our competitor tonight?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Zoids Genesis. Zoids Genesis is the fourth and final anime installment in the Zoids franchise. It aired on TV Tokyo from 2005 to 2006. It is unknown if Zoids Genesis will ever get a North American release, online or otherwise, but it has been shown in several markets outside the United States.
Now, I think it's worth mentioning at this point, because we started off Mecha March Madness in the middle of the pack with 4 versus 5, this is kind of a stacked conversation tonight. We're looking at Code Geass, which was the number 1 overall seed, versus the darkhorse candidate Zoids Genesis coming in at number 8. Now, we used IMDb's ratings to kind of give us an idea of where these were going to rank. And honestly, they weren't separated by all that much, a few tenths of a point here or there. So these are like the cream of the crop. So we're going to see if number 1, number 8, if there's an upset in the making, and then how everything shakes out at the end. As for what these are actually about, for Code Geass, the story is set in an alternative timeline where the world has become split into 3 superpowers. Britannia, which is actually the Americas, the Chinese Federation, or Asia, and the European Union, which is actually Europe and Africa. The story takes place after the Holy Britannian Empire's conquest of Japan on August 10th, 2010, ATB, whatever that means, by means of Britannia's newest weapon, the Autonomous Armored Knight, or Nightmare Frame. In turn, Britannia effectively strips Japan and its citizens of all rights and freedoms and renames the country Area 11, with its citizens, including Sean Paul Ellis, referred to as 11s. Lelouch v. Britannia is an exiled Britannian prince who is sent to Japan, who vows that he will one day obliterate Britannia. I understood probably half of those words, I think. So I feel pretty good.
Do you think that they called them nightmares for like the regal sense of sort of like they're like a knight, like like a suit of armor that they have, but then also because like mare, like they kind of have these weird wheels that kind of roll out and deploy, so it's sort of like a form of locomotion, like a mare, like a horse.
I feel like you're probably good on that first part, maybe not so much on the second. Go ahead, Shannon.
If you, and I don't know if this is cheating and going outside the bounds of thinking about this in terms of this one episode, but watching the theme song on YouTube, it's much clearer that these robots, that's probably not what I'm supposed to call them.
We go mecha.
Mecha.
Robots, they're
okay.
the same thing. Synonymous.
I'm learning about this genre as I go. So, that they are supposed to look more like knights.
Right.
Okay.
Like fantasy medieval realm knights than they appear to be in the episode we watched.
Okay.
Cool. So there's your first tidbit. And yeah, I should mention that I say nightmare, but since you're not reading along with me out there, this does start with a K. So it is kind of a portmanteau nightmare. So there you go. Zoids Genesis doesn't give a fuck. They just go straight up Zoids. They're not trying to be cute. So what do you got for us, Sean?
Oh man, so Zoids Genesis. Genesis takes place on Planet Z following the cataclysmic environmental geological event known as God's Fury that has destroyed many of the civilizations on Z and devastated the planet. Many of Z's survivors have created new civilizations with the use of giant structures called generators that are scattered around the planet. It tells the story of Ruji Familon, a young boy who finds a Liger-type Zoid during a salvage mission. Initially, his village was attacked by a Bioraptor Biozoid, and later a Biomegaraptor. Yeah, that makes total sense. After the village generator is destroyed in combat, Ruji takes a Mirasami Ligerzoid and leaves the village to find a generator mechanic, or the village will be destroyed. During his journey, Ruji fights against the militaristic nation known as Daigald.
Yeah, so there you go. That's number 8.
No pressure,
Ruji.
Ruji. No pressure at all. In terms
get your act together. So yeah, in case you guys haven't been listening for the last couple episodes, basically what we're going to do now is sort of this round robin sequence where we have 5 categories for each of these series. We're going to go around for 5 minutes, and we're going to discuss everything from theme song to plot to the mecha designs themselves and everything in between. And then at the end of each section, we'll tally up everybody's scores. At the end of tonight's episode, we will score everything all together and give you the rundown. Now, just for a point of comparison, we chose the first episode from each series throughout this month to make an even comparison together. So for some episodes, we found that, the mecha didn't really show up or didn't have a great battle in a given episode, and that's just unfortunate. But in order to make things fair, we had to pick the first episode from each one. So we will be doing the same tonight for Code Geass and Zoids Genesis. We're going to kick things off here with a discussion of the theme song, starting with Code Geass. And since Shannon, you're our guest, we're going to let you take it away. And we've got 5 minutes for each section here, just as a reminder.
Great. So I think it's very peppy. That's probably the best thing I can say about it. It is very peppy. When we all watched it together, there was some syncopated head bobbing.
Always a good sign.
And I feel like that's a strong response to a theme song, right?
Yeah. Is it an earworm or not? Like, is it something that's like that, like later on, like you're going to be bopping your head, kind of like reminding yourself about some of the music, or is it just sort of the catchiness? Is it the lyrics, or is it the catchiness of the actual like score that's behind the theme music that really kind of gotcha?
Can I tip my hand and say it's no Zoids theme song?
Oh,
foreshadowing.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to compare. No, I think it's the vocals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I kind of felt, conversely, I felt that it was sort of the vocals for me weren't as memorable. It was sort of just the driving beat of it that kind of gave it that peppiness for me. I like the fact that it's sort of a hybrid clip where we are exposed to a little bit of the animation that we're going to end up seeing in some of the actual episodes itself, while they also have these kind of like long, brooding shots of our main character kind of off on his lonesome, that are probably never going to be used during the actual show itself.
In terms of visuals, too, I think it sets up nicely this idea that the show is toying with about both futurism and sort of medieval themes, right? You get the main character riding a white horse in front of a castle, as well as the mecha coming out of these sort of post-apocalyptic trucks.
Everybody in a lot of really, military regalia, that's there. Like it feels very polished. It feels like it has a sense of kind of where it is in time. But I will say my one criticism for this is that after having watched the episode, the most interesting thing about the episode is barely even discussed or shown in this theme song, leading you to believe like how important actually is the gift that our character gets versus these mecha. Because we can get into it a little bit more in the next section when we talk about plot, but what's more important here? Is it the mecha, or is it this actual gift that he receives, this bargain that he receives down the road?
We see more chess than magic in the opening
theme
song, which is interesting.
There's a lot of time spent on chess in this thing. So for me, I thought it was a solid introduction of the cast of characters, but there was no context. So you got a look at a bunch of characters. No idea who anybody was, which is fine for like an intro here. As far as the song itself, I'm probably not quite as enthusiastic even as Shannon was for this. It was just kind of like, kind of poppy, peppy, but forgettable song. So honestly, this wasn't like an earworm for me. It's not something that I can honestly even remember, even though we just refreshed ourselves 3 minutes ago by watching it. There wasn't anything that really stood out as signature or iconic or memorable about this. I will say, though, for the introduction of those characters, it is a very pretty picture that they give us. The colors are very bold. It's a very, very beautiful kind of colorful environment that they portray. So that's a nice introduction to the show itself, even though we technically didn't even see that in this first episode. We had to go elsewhere to find the theme song itself. And then they did show off some of the mechs a little bit. So it's a good way to introduce it and say this is a mech anime. And to your point, we're going to have kind of this juxtaposition of a medieval theme with a futuristic technology, and we're going to kind of mash them up together and see what works and what doesn't work. And we see more of that in the intro than we do in the first episode. So, this was kind of middle of the road for me.
Because you know what goes really, really well with taking over an entire island nation and then rebranding them against their will?
Just wait.
Robots. Just throw some robots in there. Like everybody will be like, well, I don't feel so bad being called an 11 right now because we get to see these sweet robots rolling around shooting everybody.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. The
names
plot,
that
too.
are puns.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
That have names that are puns.
Oh yeah.
So that goes a
We'll
long
get to
way
those
toward
names.
comforting colonized peoples, I find.
Yes, definitely. Once we demean your culture and just give you some cute, snappy names, everybody's right as rain. It's totally fine. All right, we got about 30 seconds left. So, Shannon, out of 5, what do you score this theme song for Code Geass?
It's gone down for me. 3.
Ooh.
It was a 4. I think it's a 3.
Okay.
3.
All right.
See, this is why we do this, too, because we do have the luxury of adding or subtracting points based on merit or based on spite, depending on how the conversation goes. So, Sean, buddy, how about you?
I was the same. I went with 3.
You went with a 3? Well, then that's 3s across the board for all of us. So we're
we're
on the same
wow.
page. Off to a good start.
Take that, Code Geass.
Take that, Geass. All right, that's right at the 5-minute mark. So, Shannon, we're going to send it back to you. And now, how do you feel about Zoids Genesis theme song? You gave us a little bit of a tease there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to read off of my notes that say, can I put this on my Spotify playlist? Can I learn to play it on my ukulele?
Wow.
What I really want to talk about, you guys, is how it builds, right? You start off with this sort of pleasant female vocals, and then it gets this sort of driving rhythm. It ends in it doesn't even end in guitar shredding. It builds to some sweet, sweet guitar shredding, and then it abruptly cuts off, just leaving you wanting more.
Okay. This was an interesting one for me because this pleasant female voice, I will agree with you on that, but in terms of kind of me getting psyched up for the show, there was a moment where I kind of felt that intro was sort of a low point. Because I was looking for sort of what we saw with Code Goose was like, some type of kind of like driving beat that was getting me excited about what I was going to watch, whether it was through like an almost a seizure montage of different images that are going on, which is always the case for these anime theme songs. But I was the moment that her voice kind of cut out, I was like, if the beat doesn't kick in, like, when you're in the car and like you're listening to a new song, you're like, if the beat doesn't kick in right now, fuck this song. And then it did, and I was like, oh, okay. Whew.
This song kept Sean from driving off the road, so I'm glad that it got its act together.
But like, I could have gone terribly wrong, and I was just like, oh, okay, good. They did the thing that I wanted it to. I kind of felt like it redeemed itself in that way.
But that's the thing. The song takes you on a journey. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes you on a journey, and then it sopranos you at the end. Spoiler alert.
If you don't know the end of Sopranos
I would love to know the crossover audience for Sopranos and Zoids Genesis, because I think it's right here in this recording studio. That's probably it. For me, you know what? Nothing really stood out. I felt it was almost kind of like a carbon copy to the one that we listened to for Code Gooses, because it was the same kind of thing. You had the slow walk montage of characters approaching the camera while like credits scroll in the background. The one thing that I will give it credit for was that they actually paired characters. Now I'm talking the intro too, not just the theme song, but they actually paired the characters with their eventual mecha. Now you don't meet any of these people for a very long time,
right?
But they at least, if I saw a mecha that I liked, they'd be like, okay, cool, that's the character who's going to pilot that thing, or that character's pretty cool. Their mecha's weird looking. This is a weird pairing. Something. They gave me something that was kind of like an anchor point to give me a starting point to get into this show. But honestly, the song itself, I couldn't hum it. I couldn't tell you anything about it right now. Just not super catchy. I will also say...
Shannon is holding a ukulele right now, ready. She has learned the song.
I'm just.
And then I listened to the outro too, and I'm not going to judge the theme song based on the outro, but it's interesting that we found another like romance-focused outro in this one. There were no safaris being had this time. There were no princesses traveling through the African savannah, which I missed. But it was another weird like romance-focused thing because anime. Go ahead, Shannon.
It was racy. I mean, the outro, I think, was downright. The lyrics, I heard a rumor and I want to see you. I may be slightly paraphrasing, but it was real close to that.
Well, last week we talked about like Dark Fingers doing something, so I'm not sure. Or Fingers in the Dark. Okay. Those are two very different things, but I don't know which one was which. So
maybe that's what the rumor was about.
It might have been. They might be talking across anime series to each other. These theme songs.
Oh no.
Intertextuality.
Yeah. Theme songs after dark.
If these theme songs are just all like trying to comment and allude to other theme songs, I love it even more.
It's the first shared universe
justified craziness
from anime theme songs across time. Okay, we're about the last minute here. So Shannon, what do you score Zoids Genesis theme song out of 5?
5.
Wow, a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
That is rare. That is rare. Interesting. Sean, what about you, buddy?
I increased my score by 1.
You can't go to 6.
Shannon sold me. I give it a 7. No, Shannon sold me on the idea of it took me for a journey. Plus, I liked the fact that when I needed the beat to kick in, it was there for me. And also, Dave, you brought up a great point, was just the pairing of the character with their mecha. So all 3 of us had great suggestions. I give it a 4.
A 4. Okay, that's fair. I'm gonna be the low baller here. I gave it a 3 because honestly, it wasn't anything super special to me. But I'm glad it took you both on a journey. An emotional journey that we'll never forget. We've experienced together.
We did it.
This is so nice, you guys.
I came here thinking I was going to record a podcast, and instead I've left with lifelong friends.
We can just end it right there because it's probably only going to get worse. All right, you ready to jump into the plot of Code Geass?
Let's do it.
All right, so Shannon, for this one, again, we're not going to go beat by beat for this one because there's a lot that kind of happens. So just kind of the highlights, the low points, what caused you to give it the score that you did?
Great. So I'll say first off that I'm not going to pretend I understand everything that happened in the first episode. But I liked that I was disoriented a lot. I thought that it was very cinematic, if you can say that about animation, using these sort of panning up, panning down, zooming, like keyholing shots, using weird noises. And it almost seemed like a horror movie when it opened up. And actually, I thought my speakers were broken for the first 10 seconds or so. I also was really into the idea that it's a counterfactual history, this idea of reimagining the present. If it seemed almost as if America hadn't had a revolution, or it had a revolution later, right? This idea that you get these sort of British aristocrats who are actually Americans was really interesting. And then there were a lot of literary allusions that I thought were interesting. There was a lot of 1984. Especially after the blowing up of those twin towers, which was a whole other crazy thing that we could go on about. But the King guy in charge with the blonde hair,
Clovis,
Prince Clovis.
Thank you. Prince Clovis shows up on a huge screen to talk to the population and says something about justice and mobilizing for war to protect peace, which is very Big Brother, right? This idea of somebody on a huge screen. And here's the promised motto, y'all. What's repeated over and over again in that novel is war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength.
Right.
So I thought that it was really rich, but I'm not sure I got it.
I mean, that's a lot to ask for the first episode too, to lay everything out and then lay it out in a way that everybody gets it without just delivering straight exposition, which we've seen in some previous episodes. But go ahead, Sean.
I mean, I actually thought that we got a decent amount. I think we got just the right amount of exposition at the top of this. Like it set the tone. It sort of let us know what was going on. They show a map during this point where I'm sitting there and I actually paused it because I was like, okay, cool. Yep. That's who we're dealing with. Got it. I was like, why is the United States called Britannia? Okay, it doesn't really matter. We're still getting into this. I was like, why does China really hate Japan? I was like, it doesn't really matter. Like it gave me enough of a taste to really get into it. And then I think an occupation story like this is always extremely compelling. We also, when we Shannon alluded to and talked about the fact that the jarring sound that this starts with is very, very interesting. And it comes in significantly with the fact that like it is these cicadas. It's cicadas and it's two boys having this almost, you see visually what's happening, but there's no audio. You can tell that they're talking, but it's been removed and it's just drowned out with these cicadas. And it comes back into play and buttons so well as a catalyst for our hero's journey in this episode that I was like, thank you. That was so rewarding. And we saw it in the first episode. Right. It really did a great job to prime this for me.
Yeah, for me, so like on a macro level, I thought it was really cool that they took, they have a mecha anime, but they decided to focus it on like an alt history with an invasion and occupation. That's crazy. Like that's a weird thing to do. And I really like that they went out and did it. So it wasn't just like just generic war. They went through and they like built the world around it. Sean, I love the point that you made about the maps because I was just kind of like, if they would have just said the Britannian Empire, invaded Japan, I'd just be like, okay, weird. Britain like colonized Japan, they took them over. But no, they point out on the map that it's the Americas. So that's already like a weird wrench in the plan. Right. So you are thrown like 7 years after this invasion, you are now thrown into what's called Area 11, which is Japan. And you feel this tension between all the different characters, the factions, the military who is invading and occupying, the citizens who are trying to just live their lives as Japanese or as 11s, as they call them, and then the separatist groups, the terrorists, the nationalists, the rebels, whatever side you want to ally them with. That's really fascinating. And then once you zoom in on just this character focus here, because we do have to focus on Lelouch, the main protagonist, he's got an interesting kind of arc too, because as we don't really learn in this first episode, he was Britannian who was sent to Area 11 and he's kind of stuck there, but he also had some personal trauma in the war. So he is now actually against Britannia. And that kind of plays out a little bit with some of the character interactions here. But then the craziest thing of all is sort of this sacrificial moment with one of these new characters who we'll talk about that gives him some sort of untapped power that we only briefly get to explore in this episode. So, long story short, a lot of interesting ideas, a really good execution of them, and it left me wanting more, which is why I scored it the way I did. So, we're bad out of time, but we'll go back around. Sean, did you have something more to say before we do final scores?
No, let's do final scores. I'll do
Okay,
it.
good, Sean.
5, based on
Nice.
sort of wanting to rewatch it and wanting to watch the series. And that was confirmed for me hearing you guys talk about it and bring up points I hadn't even thought about. So.
Yeah, same. Go ahead, Sean.
5 for me as well.
Wow.
I really liked the fact that this is a mecha, but we're not even really talking about the main point or power of this story. It almost seems like these robots are tertiary to a lot of the things that are happening because it is squared so basely on this alt history isolation story, which is very compelling.
Yeah, they're
And
like
it just feels like it also just happens to have robots in it.
Yeah, they're like weapons of war. They're like tools. They're like tanks or jeeps or planes or whatever. They're not the focus. Now, there is some cool stuff to be seen here later on, but that's not the main focus. So it's a 5 for me as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
these
yeah.
mechas aren't like the end all to be all like those dumb Gundams.
Get out of here. I knew that was coming.
Get out of here, Gundams.
Gundams are the
Gundams. Gundams.
Gundam forever.
Ugh.
So that's 5s across the board. That's the first time that's happened on this show,
Wow.
at least this month. I
Fuck.
don't know if it happened last year or not. So
No, it didn't.
good job,
That's
everybody.
amazing.
We can just wrap it up right there if you want.
We're done. This is the second time we've called this show.
Yeah,
early
it
tonight.
does not bode well. All right, so we're gonna stick with plot. But we're gonna jump on over to Zoids Genesis and see how that panned out. So Shannon, how did this one leave you feeling? Ooh, was that like a bomb dropping, or was that a?
Yeah, maybe. So I was also confused about this plot, but not intrigued.
Okay. A fair
Ooh.
distinction.
So it starts off saying that there's a change in the planet's axis, but never explains why. And, reading background on it, I was sort of intrigued by this idea of a global war that destroyed the Earth, but it's nowhere in this opening episode. I'm not sure if that's because I don't have context for it. But I also I had a hard time seeing past the gender roles and the sort of sexism inherent in the whole opening episode where the men were pilots, and other than the sort of feral woman in the woods who hugs a fish to death.
Naked
Naked.
catches a fish and then
Yeah, she was the most progressive woman in the episode. She wasn't bringing lunch and then being criticized.
people got to eat.
Right. So yeah, I thought that the mecha was cool in this one, but I have no desire to ever go anywhere near this series again.
Oh wow! So the plot just really wasn't like something that was. So the gender roles aside, it just I guess maybe it was something, and I don't want this to sound terrible. I didn't really even notice that.
Yeah,
like
same.
it was something that in this, like I legitimately was just like, because we're exposed to kind of these people, and it seems like in this very simple traditional village, like orchestrating their lives and just surviving, and it seemed like they were doing pretty much anything that they could. Like I was actually some of the interactions between some of the members, like the brother and the sister. Because far too often I feel like they're pitted against one another. And in this, they were just like, brother, why don't you go do this? And he's like, I've tried a couple times and it's not worked. And and his sister's like, I believe in you, brother. You're going to be a pilot one day. And he's like, probably not.
So you're saying
Until
the woman was there to support the man and spur his journey forward? Is
Careful,
that what
Sean.
you're saying,
Careful,
Sean?
Sean.
I'm simply saying that I liked the fact that we had a brother and sister dynamic, and it was encouraging instead of confrontational.
Was
Okay.
that
my
a sister?
my dislike.
I thought it was just
What?
another younger brother. I couldn't tell one way or the other.
I don't know. I had a hard time with some of the
Okay.
gender fluidity with just the look.
Definitely a sister,
sister.
who came from the house with lunch for her father. and
Okay,
mother.
I'll go with that then.
But honestly, aside from that hiccup, I'm not saying I didn't like it because I thought it was sexist. For me, it was more a symptom of there are so many interesting things you can do when you radically reimagine the future, that there are also different ways to bring traditionalism forward. And this plot, I felt like I'd seen this plot before, but without mecha.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess for me, the interesting thing was that it was sort of the other end of the spectrum from these kind of like global or interplanetary wars or wars between colonies and the home planets that we've seen. it was kind of like super laser focused on this one little village, that the story was going to start there and it was going to expand and blossom out from there. That's the kind of thing that I sort of focused on this. I thought it was interesting to go with a world that was kind of scrubbed clean, and there were only a few survivors that ended up making civilization over again. I thought that was an interesting way to approach it for a mecha anime, because these things weren't built by the people who are currently living. They're like excavating like ancient artifacts essentially at this point. I thought that was an interesting twist, sort of on the mecha idea. Now,
so it's like Zoids Indiana Jones.
It's like Zoid Indiana Jones. Terrible.
No.
Thought I had it. Not good. Go ahead, Shannon.
Dave, how do you see them as having remade civilization other than just starting it again?
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I'm just saying, as far as compared to other shows that we've watched or other mecha anime series, it's interesting just from that viewpoint. But to your point, which is probably going to change my score, they did not do anything interesting with that. The idea is interesting, but they did not do anything interesting with that idea. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, there was one thing that was interesting that nobody really talked about, which are these generators, which look like they're sort of biomass, like electrical, like pillars, that are in the middle of their town that these raptors are after, and you don't really know why they're after it. You don't really know what the deal is, how, like, the engineering that was behind them was almost more interesting to me than a majority of this show.
Like the mythology behind it too.
Yeah, like the mythology behind it. Like, I love a good cataclysmic, like, world coming, back from the brink story. But I think Shannon's right. Like, what the fuck else did they do?
If you're gonna wipe out, if you're gonna scrub the entire surface of the Earth and basically all history, and not Earth, you're on planet Z, but whatever, same thing, and then not do anything different than traditionally, then yeah, that's kind of a missed opportunity. So we see the same heroic boy kind of go through all this stuff. So go ahead.
I'm interested in the generators too, but the only reason we know that they're generators, I'm pretty sure, is because we've done outside reading.
There was no mention of generators or anything in this.
No, there was one mention when the raptors, when they were scanning the village, they identified that there was a generator that was there. And they said, we need to go take it.
I could not decipher half of that gobbledygook scrawled at the bottom of the screen.
Whatever Baymax from Big Hero 6, a spelt version of Baymax.
We'll get to that when we talk about characters, because I have some problems with whatever the hell was going on there. But we're about out of time. So, Shannon, what do you score the plot of Zoids Genesis out of 5?
2.
A 2. That's fair, I think. I think that's fair. Sean, what about you, buddy?
Shannon made me change my score. I think she brought up a lot of really great points. I gave it a 2. Or I'm sorry, I gave it a 3. Holy crap. I gave it a 3. I went down from a 4 to a 3.
I was going to say a 2-point drop.
Woo.
I actually did the same. So I originally gave it a 4, but I think you made some very good points that honestly I didn't even really pay attention to. So I'm going to change mine to a 3. So well done.
Dave, it's because we're white straight men.
Yeah, our guilt is real.
No, I only bring it up to say there are interesting things. It's one example of interesting thing. Why am I apologizing for pointing out that like all the women were serving lunch?
You made a great point, Shannon.
Embrace
but
it.
That's one example of many things they could have done.
I'm sorry that you're sorry.
See, the interesting thing
we're hugging over here now.
The interesting thing about this, though, is like some of these are on, people have asked in the past if we can do like half points, and we don't like to do that just because we ask to round up. Just give it the benefit of the doubt. So some of these, like, I'm on the plot, and I'm like, well, it's got some points here, it's got some points against it. A 4, I think it does something interesting, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But then we have these discussions, and that changes your viewpoint, and it makes more sense as a 3. Because, they scrubbed the world, but then they just did kind of the same thing. So not really any different from anything else. But let's jump back to Code Geass now. Let's get into these characters. Now, this is going to be sort of the non-mecha designs of the characters, their personality, if it's people that you want to follow through additional episodes. So, Shannon, what do you think about the characters of Code Geass?
I was really interested in the groups of characters. This idea of an aristocracy, that a ruling class that is visually modeled after the British aristocracy around the time of the American Revolution, and how they relate to this idea of students. And then the people living in the ghetto, quote unquote ghetto, hey 90s. So yeah, I think, and I was interested in who is the girl with the green hair. Is she going to come back because she is in the theme song? And I was compelled by the main character and his relationship with just about everybody he encountered along the way through this first episode.
All right, John, what about you?
It was interesting. I think you bring up great personality and character traits about them. I think what was a little bit frustrating for me, and maybe it's because I've been kind of saturated with these shows for the last month.
We have watched a lot.
And is just the design.
Yeah.
I don't feel that the design for these characters that are Lelouch. He looked like whenever Yu-Gi-Oh! Transforms into the older Yu-Gi-Oh! That's possessed by like a mystical Egyptian god. His friend Rivals?
Yep.
Or look like a Pokemon character that you would play like in Pokemon Sun and Moon. I mean, like I felt like a lot of these, even like the General or even Governor General, which I think he's the greatest actor in Area 11. I even think Governor General kind of reminded me of Birdface from Gundam the other week. Like some of these people, they a lot of the character and a lot of the design is stuff that I felt has been done better elsewhere. And so for me, it just sort of felt like this was a smorgasbord and they kind of a la carte picked what they wanted from different shows and just dropped them into this one.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. The designs kind of stuck out, especially from the intro that Lelouch kind of has. At one point, he's got this kind of like sleek armor. He's got a cool helmet. Now, we don't really see that in the episode itself, but the first thing that jumped out at me was his purple eyes. I mean, how many characters have purple eyes? But then to Sean's point, he looked like if Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kaiba were like weirdly mashed together because he was built like Kaiba, but he had the weird eyes like Yugi. But purple eyes on a character, you automatically kind of have my attention because that's weird and you don't see that very often. So I liked Lelouch's design. I liked his sort of military sort of uniform. The girls at the school, who we only see briefly, and we only meet as like, companions, friends maybe of Lelouch and his friends.
Let's be very clear. These women, they only serve a purpose to get our Yu-Gi-Oh! Main character in further trouble and shot at.
I mean, did they even
by calling him?
Oh yeah.
And then immediately he hangs up because he's in a dire situation. And the girl's response, obviously she doesn't have the context, but I love how she's like, huh?
He hung up on me. Like they had to cut to that for her one other scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Well, they're establishing how like desirable he is too, right? They're fangirling over him. He doesn't even have magic yet. So imagine how they're gonna feel when they find out.
Man, panties are gonna be thrown at him at that school when he comes back with his god eye.
his hawk eye.
We're not even talking about this yet. We haven't even talked about this god eye shit yet.
That was part of the plot. But we can talk about that now if you want, because it's
like I think it's specific to this character. It reminded me a lot of if you've ever read the graphic novel. I don't recommend watching the television show on AMC, Preacher. Where the main character there is possessed. He has the voice of God, and so what he says happens. And so there was some interesting constraints that we were introduced to regarding that power for our hero in this. But it was still the most interesting thing that happened in this entire show.
Well, I would say
I just don't want to gloss over that.
We shouldn't, because it's pretty important, and equally as important is the catalyst for how he got that power. So essentially, there's a terrorist attack, which Shannon alluded to or mentioned earlier, and then as Lelouch kind of gets wrapped up in this, he discovers that the weapon that the terrorists are carrying is not actually like a gas bomb like they think it is. It's a girl, and she's like wrapped up in some kind of weird straitjacket that like covers her mouth, and
it was very Melfina and
Outlaw Star minus or very much what's her name from
she
Firefly.
Had clothes on in this sense. Yeah, exactly.
So same kind of thing. There's usually in a lot of these stories, for whatever reason, there's like a naked mystery girl wrapped up somewhere
in a suitcase.
Or a weird sphere thing. So yeah, in this case she had a straitjacket on. But long story short, she sacrifices herself to save this guy who she never met, but she has this weird kind of like psychic connection with. Grants him this power in exchange for something that we don't really know yet. He's got, oh my god, what even was it? Like the power of, I wrote it down somewhere. I don't even know what it was. Like oh god, help me out.
Oh, the Ragnarok connection?
Yeah, Ragnarok connection of Ragnarok, something like that.
It's like some guy, they say, if you agree to the contract, you will live as a human.
The power of kings,
differ
the Ragnarok
from other
connection,
humans.
yes.
Ragnarok connection.
Yeah, so that.
And so
we have no clue what that is, except that he has God Eye and he has an Assassin's Creed like eagle that flies out of it and just murders everybody in front of
Laser
it.
eagle.
Laser
eyes.
eagle. He's a Silverhawk now, and
Okay.
he essentially has like this mental power that compels everybody in front of him to do what he says. So it gets him out of trouble, but now he's got like this crazy power. So there were enough interesting changes and tweaks and redesigns to the characters throughout. I love the military theme of it. That's been a common theme throughout these series, but I felt like it distinguished itself enough with Governor General Bartley. I liked it. I liked it. There was enough to distinguish each of the characters that I wasn't confused with who was who, and I can remember I could pick them out of a lineup. And honestly, a lot of the times that's enough for me.
Okay.
We're a little over. So any final points before we score these? Nothing else? So Shannon, how did you score the characters of Code Geass out of 5?
4.
Game of
I
4
was
out of 5.
wavering there for a minute. I was going between 3 and 4, but
it's
I
tough.
really feel like I cared about the main character's LaRouche's relationship with the people he encountered.
Yeah.
So that's a feat, I think, for a 20-minute plot.
Okay.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, if you want to elaborate on that, feel free to, because he does have some decent interactions with the people that kind of cross his path.
He has a really interesting chess game with an aristocrat that leads to character development through the tension between these two representatives of different classes and spheres.
Starting with the king.
Right. And he and his friend obviously have a sort of comical buddy relationship. The relationship that's established at the beginning through that weird, freaky horror montage with the cicadas and the like almost alien, like a Ridley Scott type dissonant wah 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 noise that comes to fruition in 20 minutes in a sort of compelling and moving way. Yeah, those are all the things that have led me to bump it up from a 3 to a 4.
Okay.
Now, Sean, what about you?
I give it a 3. I felt that I had seen these characters before, and as much as caring about them, I still just don't feel like the design was interesting, other than maybe say purple laser eagle eye.
That's pretty iconic.
Pretty much all 3 points are resting inside of purple laser eagle eye right now. Everybody else, I was just like, you guys could die, and you probably will die. And I'm surprised that you made it through this 23-minute episode. So congratulations on holding on to that for probably another 23 minutes, because episode 2, dead.
I kind of wanted Lelouch after that chess match to be like the Prince of Tennis and just be like, you've still got a way to go. But
fuck,
that would have been great.
That would be awesome.
Way for him to walk out. But I give it a 4. I really like the design. I like how they changed it and altered it throughout. That's not something you see very often, that like marked changes to a main character that like makes you kind of pay attention more as you lead into the next episode. And then to Shannon's point, all of his kind of interactions on a very personal level within that 20 to 25 minutes was pretty cool. And the payoff, again, like you mentioned earlier, the payoff from that introductory scene, pretty stellar. Not perfect, pretty stellar. So I give it a 4.
I feel like if we were grading it on writing, like on the writing for this pilot, I'd be like, it's a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
But I feel like for just character design, I'm just like, all right.
Well, I mean, I think that's important because it's the design draws you in, and then the writing fills that character out and determines whether or not you want to stick with them, whether you care about them, whether you want to watch them lose or watch them win or watch them struggle or whatever you want. But yeah, if I think it's kind of inherent in part of it, so you can kind of score however you want. But that's just my take on it.
Okay.
As for, well, I'll hold my peace. Let's get to the characters of Zoids Genesis. What do you think about these guys, Shannon?
Ooh. Okay, so I'll start with I'll start on a positive note. I think that the main character I actually am intrigued by.
Ruji?
Ruji, yeah. Coming back to your point, Sean, about him and his little sister, there is something sort of touching about the way he interacts with people, and he's a character I could see myself sort of sticking with and going on a journey with, basically.
Okay.
But beyond him, this kind of comes back to my idea of just stock characters. You have the sort of grumpy patriarch, and you have the white-haired grandmother who is there to communicate with the ancestors, and the red shirt pilots who are certainly going to die as soon as the T-Rex mecha invade the village. And everybody is sort of a stock character.
Right. I think that this is hard just because if this is your first Zoids that you've ever watched, I think that really the namesake is why people watch this. And we'll get into this shortly, but I think that sort of the characters themselves on the inside of these things are again very like they're ephemeral. Like you could put anybody in the pilot seat for one of these and people be like, fuck yeah, that's a liger. It's a white liger with a knife in its mouth. Awesome. Like, but my biggest complaint about this is, again, it has to do with a lot of the things that I brought up about Code Goose, is that I did not feel like there was anything unique or interesting. To your point, I felt like all the male adults in this, I couldn't pick out the dad in a lineup. They looked like they were all like Control-C, Control-V, like multiple times across this. And I felt like the character, and I think Dave will understand this, I feel like Ruji looked like one of the kids from Digimon.
100% what I had in my notes.
Thank you. 100% look like other kids from other cartoons that we've seen. And so the only thing that I think was unique about this were sort of some of the villain characters that we saw that were in those raptor mechs.
Yeah.
As I had mentioned, and I mean, and the thing that I had the biggest problem about them was just fucking understanding what they were saying. It was just garbage. It's like when you watch Bane in the Nolan Batman for the first time, and you're just like, dog, this better have some fucking subtitles when I get it at home. Otherwise, like, I'm gonna lose my mind.
But the subtitles looked like they'd been run through some sort of noise machine, right? It was clear that they were trying to convey that there was a different sort of mechanical voice being used, but they were impossible to read.
Or sometimes
it's
not
like
even
somebody,
there, which was driving me crazy.
Yeah. They were real. Everything that like was coming out of there was like somebody was like, you know what? What's worse than wingdings? And you're like, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me for fucking subtitles, dude. It's bad.
Yeah, Comic Sans would have been an improvement. Yeah. At least I could have read it.
That's why I missed the generator thing.
That's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we're at in this thing. Anything else, Sean?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, for me, so like Sean mentioned,
with my hate.
Straight out of Digimon, like the main guy, I mean, he just looked 100% like the main character from Digimon. So all of these characters look like they were just kind of ported over from any younger skewing anime. They're not distinguished at all. I mean, even like Fish Girl, who we never meet, have no idea what she's doing. Like the only thing that distinguished her,
she's hugging a fish.
She's topless and hugging a fish. That's the only thing that distinguishes her character. I mean, later on she has like a costume. I do like that they kind of going with the sort of folkish, traditional, kind of down to earth, like earth tones and grass huts and like wooden structures and things like that. I like that they kind of pared that down. There was kind of that organic feel to everything, but there wasn't really enough there to make me want to stick around with that world. It was cool. It was a cool juxtaposition against the those pilots that Sean mentioned and the other Zoids and stuff that show up, because it's a strange contrast between these very like organic shapes and colors and clothing and people, and then you have these like crazy metal red and silver monstrosities come in. So that was a cool contrast. Even with the liger itself, when they pull it out of the water, there's a lot of kind of like elemental stuff going on with these characters, but it didn't really like gel together for me to make it stand out from anything else that I've watched before. So it was decent, and they had some decent ideas, but execution wasn't great. So I did like the hero's journey for Ruji. I liked that it was going to start that way, but also you already know those beats. You've seen them before. You know exactly where everything's going to go. So it was kind of predictable. Let's score this one up. So Shannon, how do you rank the characters of Zoids Genesis?
Sean, I was comforted to hear you say that the Zoids were why people watched this, because that makes total sense to me. Yeah. So the characters for me are a generous 2.
Ooh, a generous 2.
I give it a 2 as well.
Wow, 2.
Same reason.
I actually gave this one. Oh, go ahead, Sean, if you had a point.
No, I gave this a 2. I agree with you as well, Shannon.
Gotcha. I actually gave it a 3.
Very generous.
Just because I liked that the sort of the organic elemental effects and visuals kind of paired with the story, but honestly, like the characters themselves are pretty stock. So a 3 is average, and for me, that's where it's gonna stay. So that's it. Take that, Sean.
Oh, for the kid that looks like that he was from Digimon but dressed from Dragon Ball.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
But they were wearing some neutral colors. So.
Oh yeah,
it was a neutral palette, and I enjoy that. Most things in my apartment are brown because it's easier that way. So I just felt at home is what I'm saying, guys. Felt at home on the planet Z.
Big plots of dirt.
I just have like
soil.
coffee cans full of dirt around. Just makes me feel like at home.
Live in a straw hut.
Yeah. With a straw hat.
With a giant sword in the middle of it.
What's wrong with this? You guys are saying it like that's a weird thing to do.
You just have to pray to it constantly.
Yeah, constantly. And then someday that giant sword will fly out of a mountain and land in a tiger's mouth.
Oh God.
Zoids. Speaking of
which,
let's get to
did
why
we just
we're all
both
here.
jinx
Let's
on
talk
that?
about these mechs. Let's talk about the bots. We actually got some decent ones in Code Geass. So Shannon, I believe this is your first kind of exposure to Mecha, right? So
it is, yeah. And I kind of came in cold on purpose because I felt like, I wanted to experience it for the first time. And so I have these are other than the sort of Transformers or other mainstream sort of mecha that I've been exposed to by proxy. This is sort of my first exposure to this. So I thought the mecha in Geass were fine.
Okay.
I love the fact that there is that kind of night illusion, and there was some interesting unfolding of metal to have protrusions of lasers and things turning, and it was visually interesting at points to watch them unfold and operate, but they were okay.
Okay. Well, there's one outside that you have to drive home, so you better get used to it.
Can I have the Liger instead?
You can have the Liger.
No, you can have the Liger instead. I really I felt like a lot of these nightmares looked like they loaded like the mech that we've seen from Neon Genesis Evangelion, like in the back of the head, like where the spine would be like attaching to the actual head of the mecha.
I don't know if the pilots are full of gel, but get that right, I do.
No, there's no LCL on this. So they kind of load the pilot like an Ava, but they have the kind of design of just not a Gundam, but just the regular mobile infantry troops that we've seen. And so I mean, they were interesting and they were kind of cool to watch them battle. We see them really kind of battle each other very, very briefly, and that's about it. Where we have a terrorist in one of the actual nightmares. Kind of, comparing the fact that one's in an older version of a nightmare saying like, your Glasgow versus my Sutherland. There's been a lot of improvements. And I'm just like, all right, let's calm the fuck down. It's like talking to somebody when they're just like, oh, you got a PS4. Well, I've got an Xbox One. You're just like, I don't really care about, can I do the thing that I need to do, which is shoot a metal hook into the sky and pull down a helicopter? Yeah, I can do the same in both. I'm fucking great with that. But I felt like they were kind of run of the mill. Again, I don't feel like they were really the star of this show. I feel like they were just included, as we've mentioned before, as machines of war, and that was really it. The interesting thing was really, again, the laser purple god eye.
I think that's what Code Geass stands for, is laser purple god eye.
God, I hope so.
Look, for me, this is where I'm going to nerd out, because this is like the whole reason I wanted to do this month. I love those stupid names and the technicalities and things like that. I love that they were just like, oh, you've got an older Glasgow model. I'm piloting a Sutherland. Later on, they say like, oh, we brought the Lancelot out for no reason. Like, I love shit like that. It's so nerdy and stupid, but I love it because it distinguishes each model from the next, and it gives you a reason to be part of the fandom. If you want to get into the models or if you want to get into the specs or whatever, that's where I live, and I'm totally fine with that. I really like that they introduced the earlier models. When one thing that was really interesting is they were like, Britannia has mobile suits and they're invading Japan. I was like, the fuck? Like, that should never happen. Japan should always have mobile suits and invade everybody else, so that made no sense. But I love the fact that they were not prepared for mobile suit warfare, like, of all the things. But they had older practical like military bots, and then you got to see an evolution to these new kind of like specialized ones for specific pilots, and I like that. And some of my points went over to the battles, but I like that you got to see a bit of the design of like the Glasgow. She had like that fist that launched out. You got to see some of the technical stuff, not a lot.
The Sutherland was decorated like Kiefer Sutherland.
It was weird. It was just like his giant face from 24. I don't know why they did that.
I would watch it just for that.
That was another one of those weird predictive of the future things, right? I was like, what is Kiefer Sutherland doing in this?
Who knew he had it like a Gundamian
It's like there's a terrorist
exoskeleton?
attack on Twin Towers, and there's Kiefer Sutherland in 24, and I don't even think it had come out yet.
Well, he's not even on 24 anymore. It's 24 Legacy with the new actor.
with Corey Hawkins.
He's evidently pretty great. Yeah.
Corey Hawkins from The Walking Dead.
Yeah. So
Tune
you
into
know what that
AMC
means?
Sunday
What does
nights
that
for The
mean?
Walking Dead.
That means Kiefer Sutherland is no longer with us in this time frame, in this timeline that we have.
I was really on board with this counterfactual history until I was totally fine with colonization and robot war suits until you removed Kiefer
Look,
Sutherland.
the good news is he's no longer with us, but he does have a titanium exoskeleton, so he's totally fine. It's going to be
Oh,
fun.
I like that.
I feel like I'm the outlier on this one, but let's get to the scores here. So, Shannon, what do you score the mech design for Code Geass?
I gave it a 3.
Give it a 3. At that, middle of the road.
It was interesting. Yeah.
I give it a 3
Give
as
it a
well.
3 as well. Okay, I'm a nerd, so I give it a 4, and I'm sticking by
All
that.
right.
I really did like the fact that we got glimpses of the specialized ones, and we saw an evolution from the stock model up to the newer beta version, whatever you want to call it. When we talk about battles, I'll say why that was also disappointing at the same time. So, okay, cool. Talking mechs, let's get over to the Zoids. What's
do it.
going on with the Zoids?
I loved the
Okay, cool.
Zoids. As much as I hated the characters, I loved the
Got a new fan.
Zoids.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, you could remove the humans from this show and I would probably watch it. And part of what was so interesting about it is they were animated differently.
Yes.
Every time, which fascinated me, right? So watching those odd silver Zoids invade the village was kind of uncanny. I got this weird feeling from watching them move because it didn't seem to fit with the flat animation of the rest of the world that was built. And so it gave me this sort of eerie, creepy feeling, and I liked it. I was fascinated watching them.
So before we get to Sean, since this was your first time kind of watching them, like, did one particular model stand out or look better to you? Because we saw like 4 or 5 different kinds.
Did we?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
we did. We saw a couple different kinds of these guys.
This is not where my eye
okay.
goes, Dave,
Okay.
and listeners. I apologize. This is not my wheelhouse. I was really looking at how the animation was different more than I was looking at how the Zoids were different. I believe I remember one of the Silver Zoids being bigger. And I do recognize that there was a Turtle Zoid and a Liger Zoid, both of which I enjoyed. And I enjoyed both of their sort of special features. What with the blue laser melting and the sword.
Oh, right. We have the beam tortoise.
The beam tortoise.
Is what you're talking about. And we also have the Murasami Liger that we have that Ruji activates. It's really challenging because I think, again, to what we've posited and asserted the entire podcast is that you watch Zoids for the Zoids. And I know that this is the final Zoids installment that they made, but we need a 5th one that's just called Zoids No Humans.
Yeah, same with Transformers.
And it's
I'm
just
on board.
it's just these Zoids just hanging out, chilling, doing Zoid stuff, like having a good time. And I this show was the Zoids in this show were great. And I think that even at the end, we're exposed to, and we have like this action shot of these 2 new Zoids. So we have these Raptor Zoids that are there. We have these Millipede Zoids. We have this beam tortoise. We have a Liger, a white Liger, which is like the definitive Zoid in this entire series, doing one of his coolest moves ever, which is this blade sword in the mouth cutting through the Raptor guy.
The
like
amazing.
Move, yeah.
It's extremely satisfying to watch him do this. And then at the very end, we get like what looks like an elk, like a stag Zoid. And I was like, the fuck is that? Like, I've never seen that before. And so like it pulled me in. I wanted to just watch more of just those Zoids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel kind of the same way. So you tune in for the Zoids, like you said. The Liger has gone through so many different models over the years. And then Shannon, to your point, like, as the series progresses, that shift in animation doesn't really change. Like, there's always that weird shift for a computer-generated Zoid to a kind of traditionally drawn human, and it's always that weird disconnect and that kind of cognitive dissonance of like, wait, how are these things in the same world? This looks a lot better than some of the earlier ones did. Some of the earlier ones are super blocky and janky, and the animation's all over the place. These are a lot smoother. For me, I like the mythology of the mechs. The fact that this the Liger was sitting at the bottom of the ocean for like thousands of years, and kind of came up and just had some barnacles on him, and he was good to go. Like he just had to get charged up, and he was ready to rock. I did not really enjoy the Bioraptor designs at all. I hated the pilots that were inside of them. Thought that was ridiculous. I don't know what is going on with Baymax. I love the beam tortoise. The fact that it was kind of like this clunky, kind of slow Zoid that was more like practical and did kind of the yeoman's work. Was not meant to be a battler, but he still had like a pretty sweet cannon that didn't actually do anything at the end of the day. But I thought it was cool that they introduced those. They introduced like those centipede Zoids, and then whatever the hell that wolf and elk thing were at the end.
Yeah.
That was kind of I wavered on that. I was like, I don't know if this is cool or just like if they've taken Zoids too far and this is just super stupid. Because it was like this massive elk with like a 10-point horn on his head. I'm just like, this seems wildly impractical. So I don't.
I guarantee that like those antlers are probably one's gonna hold a gun and the other's gonna hold
just turns
like
into 10
some
guns.
type of a katana blade. And he's gonna run at them like shooting guns and then cutting them in half. And I'm like, that's what I'm watching this show for. That's the reason I hit play on this video is for that craziness.
I want to know. I want to know what each of those 10 horns does.
Right. I hope they're all different and
need to know.
distinct weapons.
Oh,
but
yes.
it allows your imagination to run a little bit too, right? Especially since we're in this canon of animals of some kind, like what other Zoids might show up. And I'm intrigued by the fact that they have a psychic relationship with their owner, that they're animate in their own right, and they're not just a suit that's being worn.
Because the person who activates it, the name comes to them at the time that they activate that Zoid. And I was like, well, that's a kind of a fun little like distinguishing. It's a nice little polished piece that you put on there that makes them really unique. So I enjoyed that as well.
Especially when you call it Murasame, which I believe translates into either cold rain, autumn rain, or a hard rain.
Ooh,
the hard rain Liger.
Hard rain Liger.
Yes. This is the kind of nerdy stuff that I love. So I also love, real quick before we get to the scores, that they said like, oh, this is a big one. Like this Zoid is a large variety, and I don't know if we're going to be able to pilot it. And then they say, well, I've heard rumors that ones as big as mountains have been excavated.
Yeah, that was
and
cool.
We've watched earlier series of the Zoids where like there are literal like mountain-sized machines that move super slowly, but they are these kind of like organo-metal Zoid things. So it's kind of a nice nod back to the other series too. All right, Shannon, so let's talk Mech Design. How do you score this one for Zoids Genesis?
5 for the hard rain Liger.
That's a hard rain Liger.
Yeah. I am enjoying nerding out. Like I could keep talking about this.
Yeah.
And that surprises me for this aspect of anime. So
I'm the same. I gave Zoids a 5 for Mech Design.
You guys gave them a 5. I don't know. There was something for me about those raptors. It was just still kind of jank. I mean, by this point in the game, I feel like they should have that locked down. They just look kind of goofy to me. And then the elk came in at the end. I don't know, man.
You're so used to the raptors that have like the giant gun that's 4 times its size on
Maybe
its
that's
back.
what it is. Yeah.
From either Chaotic Century or New Century. And
I'll give you each one. I'm at a 4 now. I'll give you each 1 point. Maybe take me to a 5. Like one sentence. Just one convincing moment. Give me to a 5.
The fact that the dad shoots the beam tortoise misses and then just goes, shit, I can't believe I missed.
What a dad move. I don't know. What do you got, Shannon? What's going to take me to a 5?
Mountain Monument Mouth Knife.
All right. Okay. I got to give you that. Sean, it was a good try, buddy, but Mountain Monument Mouth Knife was too much.
Not gonna win with dad references.
Dad reference was great. And he's like, shit. But the fact that you pray to a mountain knife and it flies into a Liger's mouth, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Pretty
I can't.
sweet.
Yeah, that's worth a point, I think. Fair enough. So that's a 5 for me. That's our second all 3 5s. That's fantastic.
It's the second all 3 5. Wow.
All right.
Damn.
Each of these had their unique strengths, for sure.
Very true.
Definitely.
All right, let's jump on back to Code Geass for our last section here. Now we're talking battle, action. These are supposed to be like action-packed anime series. What was the level of battle like? Did you feel engaged with the action? How do you score? Or well, not how do you score it yet, but how do you feel about it, Shannon?
I felt a lot of the battles or the violence in this episode were just disturbing. We had the terrorist attack.
Yeah.
We had the threat of a chemical weapon. And then what really sort of brought it home for me is there is this moment where Prince Lelouch is hiding. And so are other people from the mechs that are coming in, and a baby starts crying.
Yeah.
It's just a random baby crying for about 5 seconds before you hear a gunshot.
Yeah.
And
then no more baby crying.
Right.
Ugh.
And even though you don't see that on screen, later his eagle eye basically massacres a whole, small contingent of bad guys. It's pretty violent. It's pretty bloody.
Even the points where they're instructed to basically destroy a ghetto in order to find this weapon, this chemical weapon that they are looking after, and find these terrorists. And it is these mobile suits just showing up and then just butchering everybody. Like, you even see, like, the one that was fucking with me was the fact that, like, the one woman was like, "Come on, Grandpa, we gotta go," and then, like, you see, like, an entire building be destroyed, or you see, like, a ton of random gunfire and just blood splatter, and you don't see the bodies in this sense, but, like, you know that all of these people are dead. Like, this is mass chaos and destruction, with no, it's directionless. Like, it was completely directionless. Like, these people were just like, oh, we don't really get a chance to see a lot of combat here, so they're just taking advantage of a situation and destroying everything. And for me, like, if it was something where it was like ground troops and they were just like, we're gonna go through this building one by one, try to find where these terrorists are and where this weapon is, and we're gonna leave these 11s alone because I think we've done enough terrible things to them, I'd feel like, okay, cool, this is a coordinated attack, this has direction. But this was just like, shoot them if they're walking.
But I felt like that helped world build too.
Sure,
that really situated us in what this show seems to be about. I mean, watching this woman who shows up in the opening credits get shot in the forehead right after his best friend that we're introduced to their sweet childhood relationship gets shot through the kidney,
like,
or
in the gut, like, in the kidney, like, and that's a painful way. That's center mass. You're gonna slow die. That's not quick.
Yeah, I think for me the strengths of this show were the fact that it was a mecha anime that did not focus on mecha, right? So they focused on the character building, the world building, and actually making like a mature story that was not just about like hauling a Zoid out of the water and smashing them into each other, which is fine. Like, that's just a different show entirely. But the strengths that worked for the rest of the show unfortunately hurt it when it came to like the action here that I kind of wanted to see. Like, I wanted to see a straight up mech battle. If you're going to have a mech anime series, then you want to see a mech battle. Instead, we got all out war and invasion in the beginning. We got the occupation. We got this annihilation of the ghetto, as Clovis described it. We got this brutal execution of numerous people who lived there, but also of Lelouch's friend, this random strange girl that sacrificed himself for, and then even Lelouch himself, who just God Hawkeye murdered all of these soldiers who were going to execute him too. So I mean, dark, man, but not so much like, it wasn't really like action packed. It was more for like shock value and disturbing kind of realistic violence at sometimes. That was just, I just wanted to see mechs punch each other in the mouth, and we only got to see it briefly. So for me, it got knocked a few points for that. I mean, great style points, but it got knocked a few points for keeping the mechs kind of in the corner.
What is a battle and violence for? Is if we think it's, if it's fun to watch, hey, that's an interesting thing to say, right? That we come to have fun watching violence. Although that totally applies for Zoids for me, like we'll talk about in a minute. But if it's about driving the plot forward, also, how do you classify battle? This is a tough. I need to sit back and think about my ranking for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, just the way that I took it, if I'm approaching it first and foremost as a mech anime series, so I want to see some sort of mech versus mech combat in whatever environment that happens to be. If they're protecting somebody, if they're just goofing around, if they're having a tournament where they want to see who's the best fighter, is like, any of those situations is fine to me, as long as I get to see machines wailing on each other. And you don't really get to see that in this one. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, we get a little bit of that, but I think I'm leaning on changing my total now, just based on the idea that Shannon has about the fact that, you know, I'm going to disagree with you, Dave, and say that it's not for shock value and that it is more for actual world building. And it really shows the severity of the people who are living, you know, under occupation, and the fact that these aristocrats, that this society, that they can just destroy and decimate them. Like, they are one step away at all times from just having somebody be like, you know what, pull the trigger.
Well, and they're doing it too.
Like,
Clovis says at this point, he's like, because they screwed up an operation to get this girl back, he's like, I can't be disinherited from my post, so just go wipe out this ghetto. Like, it's not just because he had a whim to do it. It's because he's like, well, I'm going to get in trouble if the story gets out, so let's just level this place. Go ahead.
And while we're speaking of wiping out a ghetto, here are a couple quotes from different random infantrymen that are on the ground.
Bad.
Go sniff out the monkeys that have the same smell as you. Patrol guard. Other patrol guard. 404 has discovered the target, which, if you're nerdy like I am, 404 has never meant that you've discovered anything. It means that you cannot find a webpage.
Right. There were lots of little Easter eggs because, I mean, the monkey thing is definitely part of racist cultural history too, right?
Sure.
And especially colonialist racial.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that they were like using the Britannians invaded, and then they used the native Japanese, kind of conscripted them into their army and said, look, you can hold a weapon if you're fighting for us, but otherwise you're not going to. Like, that's just how this rule is. And then they were using them to go out and hunt their own, which has obviously happened throughout history. So that was an interesting thing to kind of lay down. For me at the end, I just wanted to see bots punching bots. I just wanted to see real steel in there. So it knocked it a couple points for me. I still thought it was great. The writing was fantastic. But I want to see some mech. Anything else? Any other points?
Point totals. No, let's get these point totals.
Let's get them. Go ahead, Shannon. How did you score the battles or action level in Code Geass?
So I'm going to give it a 4. I like the fact that it upends your expectations for the function of violence in the show. And I totally think that there's a place for bots punching bots. But I like that this doesn't do that, and it does something else very purposefully toward the larger trajectory of the show.
Nice. Sean, how about you?
All right. I give it a 4 as well.
Give it a 4.
For all the same reasons. I feel that this did a good job with having that meaningless violence, but it had it for a reason. And I feel that we're going to get to, it teases at the idea, it dips the toe in that we're going to get some bots versus bots, you know? But again, it's not the central focus of this story right now.
Yeah, I think the only reason I gave it a 3, again, I'll go back to the same point, is just that we're kind of here for Mecha, and this ended up not being as focused on Mecha. And that was really it. Not knocking the show at all. The story, I think, is great, and I think I awarded it points for that, for plot, which we all gave it a 5 out of 5, and then for character design as well, because a good character you want to follow throughout the story. So just for me, it was kind of not disappointing, just not 100% what I was looking for action.
Gotcha.
But that's it. All difference in 3. Okay, cool. So the last section tonight, we're going to get to the battles, action level, Zoids Genesis. Shannon, take it away.
Oh, so fun. I feel like there's real potential for that sort of what if exercise. Like, what if a Tyrannosaurus and a liger fought, right? The combinations are endless. I just want more. And visually, it was really interesting. I mean, when the liger slices the Silverbot with the mountain sword, the way it sort of turns red hot in the middle and then slides apart, the two pieces slide apart from the clean cut. Really fun. Really fun.
No. I agree. You know, I think the challenge is for me that this is the third Zoids that we've watched.
Okay.
And I think the thing that I'm always a little bit concerned about is that I feel like the people who become new Zoid pilots have the benefit of discovering and unlocking this power for themselves, and then all of a sudden they're like their first fight being like phenomenally easy for them, to the point where you're just like, ooh, I want a little bit more of a struggle, like in your journey in your battle. Like we kind of, this was a fun, I love seeing this when they kind of like pimp each other out in this stuff. They're just like, so I heard there's a group of silver Zoids that are fighting, and then the chief is like, they're never gonna come down here. I'm like, they're gonna come down here so fucking fast, bro. Like, hold on to your Zoid butts, because here it comes. I think I think just in terms of the the battle and the piloting and sort of having our hero like fall into the cockpit and having everything happen. There are times when I've watched these Zoids where I want to feel like it's a little bit more earned. And I want to say that like I've now being the third of like 4 Zoids series that I've watched, I'm almost just kind of like, I want somebody to, I think we've seen one of the Zoids pilots actually go through a little bit of pain. And other times it just sort of feels like they brag a lot about being given this gift.
See, now you're talking about the people in the show again, and I don't care anymore.
We've passed that. We've crossed that bridge.
Ruji who?
Who is that? I don't.
Who?
Wait, there's a.
I do love that they just like,
You're
they
like,
close
but
that
the
cockpit,
character arc of the people. I'm like,
Yeah.
Sean, we already
Once
talked
that
about
cockpit
this.
closes, man, forget it. It doesn't matter anymore. It's all Liger time.
I'll be honest with you, because this was the Zoids, I almost wanted start to finish fighting like the entire time.
Because we're so used to it.
Like that's yeah, I'm so used to it. That's kind of like, I had that expectation. I was like, these guys are going to be brawling from the get-go. And it took us halfway through the episode for it to actually like pick up some steam and move away from these boring ass characters and with traditional gender roles into something that actually people gave a shit about.
I was hoping that fish girl, like that fish was going to turn into a weird Zoid, but no, she just ate it. She just cooked it on a spit and ate it in the wilderness. For me, so yeah, it took a while for this thing to kind of get going. They spent 2/3 of the episode dragging this thing out of the water, and then the raptors attack eventually. And the raptor attack, because I don't really like the raptor design so much, it was okay. It looked a little clunky to me. They attacked the village. That's a really good reason for all these other guys to get into their various Zoids that have been around for a long time and are not meant for battle. And they gave a good effort. Didn't do great. Dad missed his first shot, and you forgot to mention that he hit a direct shot on that second time that he fired it, and that raptor just shrugged it off. Did not give a shit. So I thought that was kind of cool. They were outclassed. This was obviously like a new class of Zoids, or they were militarized, whereas the ones at the village were just meant for like keeping the village together and kind of defending it. But then once we finally get to this kid activating the Murasami Liger, and he gets that cool slice in, and he gets like a couple headbutts in, it just wasn't enough for me. We kind of left in the middle of the final battle when Wolf Bro and Elk Dude show up, and that was fine. It was fine for a teaser, but as far as like the level of battle for me, it was just kind of like I feel like I could have used just like a little bit more, like Sean said, either like a little bit more struggle or just more like all out battle. So it was kind of middle of the road for me. It was cool to see him in action again. Just not cool. I'm on the fence with this one though. So if you guys say something that convinces me, I might give it another point because it was fun.
I'm not gonna try to sell you on this. I think Shannon might.
No, I feel like a lot of my enthusiasm is based off of the fact that this is my first exposure.
It helps.
To
And
this,
it
right?
should be. It should be. Like, you should not change your score based on the fact that you are bright-eyed about this. Because that you are in the perfect place to be watching this show right now.
Yeah. So
I'm jealous.
So I guess, Dave, what I want you to do is sort of close your eyes and just go back to the first time you watched Zoids. All right. Picture Dave from however many years ago, sitting in front of his TV or his computer. Child. Yeah. And what do you see? What do you see when you see that first Zoid?
Janky computer animation. I see a raptor with a giant cannon strapped to its back.
All right, this isn't helping. Abandon exercise. Abandon exercise.
This is cool. I did like, again, I gave it more
points.
points to the mech design, because I really did like the design of the Liger, the fact that it was like this ancient creature that still kind of had his kind of regal design and sort of stature to him, had that regal stature like a Lord Lion or whatever. That was cool. I just didn't get enough of him in this first episode, and that's probably just because, like Sean and I said, we've watched a few of them, so we know what they're capable of. It was cool. I gave it some points, just not all the points. So how did you score this 1 out of 5?
I'm giving it an enthusiastic 4.
Enthusiastic 4. I like it.
Okay. Not far off. I'm giving it a 3.
Yeah, and I gave it a 3 as well, and I feel like it's like a soft 3, like it could have been a 4, but there just wasn't enough. It was for me, it was kind of like, I've seen this, so it wasn't quite exciting enough to get at that next point. You guys feel good about our score so far tonight?
We do.
Yeah.
All right, let's see who won for this particular episode tonight. Do you guys happen to have your scores tallied? I believe I have mine here. Let's go back to Code Geass.
Oh, I do not.
Let's see what we got.
I was told there would be no math.
Oh no, we have a math test.
I'm joking. I was told that there would be math.
So let's head on back to Code Geass and let's see how we tallied these up. So let's see who wins tonight. So Shannon, do you have yours there?
I believe I gave it a 19.
You have a 19. Sean, do you know yours?
Gave it an 18.
It's an 18. So I also gave it a 19. So if I'm doing my maths right, that's like an 18.3. Should be.
Okay.
Set on down to Zoids Genesis. Shannon, how did you score Zoids Genesis in total?
16.
You gave it a 16. Interesting. Sean, buddy?
I gave it a 17.
Okay, perfect, because that averages out to a 17. Because I gave it an 18
Oh,
as
actually,
well. Uh-oh. Last minute change.
Sorry. I remember that I bumped my character score. So I think I gave it a 7.
Okay, so it should be like a 17.3 then. So that's pretty good, but it looks like Code Geass, our number 1 overall contender, is going to win by 1 point tonight. So that is the points tonight. However,
congratulations, Code Goose.
way to go, Goose. Let's see what we've got total. I don't know how upset Sean's going to be about this. We're about to find out. What do you think won overall, buddy?
What do I think won overall? Probably that lousy Gundam thing that we watched.
All right, so we've got some interesting stuff here. We're going to start at the bottom. Now we're here, and we're going to go all the way to the top. So coming in at number 8, which was, I believe, originally our 6th seed, Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam at 14.
Good.
A lowly 14. I think that's deserving. And I'm sorry, Shannon, that you haven't watched all these, so you just have to take our word for it. But
it was not good.
No, I'm sitting here just breathless with anticipation, regardless.
So I don't know what 8 gets. It gets like a aluminum cup award. I have no idea. Coming in at number 7, Ninja Robots with a score of 16.
This makes sense.
These make sense so far, yeah?
These make sense
now
so far,
remember,
yeah.
like I said, these were like the top 8 mecha anime of all time. So these were like the cream of the crop from the IMDb score. So even if you get an 8 spot, that's, no slouch. Just don't go watch Zeta Gundam.
Good.
You really don't need to. Coming in at whatever the next number is, Gurren Lagann with a score of 16.5.
Yeah, your award is side boob.
Yeah, you get
copious amounts of side
barely
boob.
their bikini and a weird giant head mech for some reason. Definitely the strangest of the anime that we watched for this month. Here's where it gets unfortunate for Sean. Coming in at 5, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
You sons of bitches.
At 17.
Sons
17.
of bitches. Thanks, Lazzaroni.
Yeah, that's all Tony. Probably me too, but definitely Tony.
Yeah, well, you guys both fucked me on that.
All right, and just missing out of the top 3, Code Geass. Tonight's effort here was 17.33, a narrow victory over Neon Genesis. And then coming.
Oh, what?
Yeah. I'm gonna double check the math,
go to the next one.
Oh wait, was it 18.3 for Code Geass?
I'm not. 18.3 for Code Geass.
Oh, I had them backwards. That's why. All right, let's switch that up.
I got really concerned because I was like, there is no way that Robotech beat out with your low scores.
Okay, so let's swap them around.
Not that low.
So it's actually Zoids Genesis that comes in at that point then. So Zoids Genesis had the 17.33, which is unfortunate because that means Zoids Genesis beat out Neon Genesis Evangelion, and that's clearly not correct. So people out there are probably really upset. I'm going to double check all this math offline, and we're going to have the final scores posted on our site. But coming in at number 3, at least for now, is Robotech with 17.5.
Oh boy.
Which means that Code Geass takes the silver medal tonight at 18.33. And guess what, Sean? You were correct. The gold medal winner, the king of the mecha, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, 18.67.
Congratulations on having math justify the thing that you love the most.
Tony was my ringer. I should mention that. So thanks out there, Tony. Math supports Gundam Wing. That's it.
That's it. This is our second our March Madness. Pocket Monster March Madness last year. We've got Mecha March Madness this year. So
I feel like the favorites, or at least my favorites, won both. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Definitely not rigged. All right, well, everything's on the up and up. All objective.
Wait until next year when we do My Little Pony March Madness.
I cannot wait until Brony Madness.
Please have me back.
So much
Please have me back.
I'm joking about this. I'm not committing to do this. I do not want to participate.
We actually had a private donor out there offer to pretty much front the cost of the entire month of March Madness.
No, he did not.
Brony Madness. Yeah, he's out there. He's listening right now.
No. Oh, God damn it.
Brony Madness coming next year.
Jason, turn this off right now. Stop listening.
All right. So again, thank you so much, Anna, for joining us tonight for our final episode of Mecha March Madness. We hope you had a good time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
and now
a
we've
blast.
made you into like a Zoids head, I think. So
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in watching a little bit more about
Cool.
for sure. That is not how I thought. That's not how I anticipated this ending,
and honestly, it's
honestly.
usually not how this show goes at all. So, nice turn of events. But for the listeners out there, what do you have coming up, and where can the folks find you on social media if you are so inclined?
What I have coming up is I'm going to be a professor at the Colorado School of Mines in the fall. So this only applies to undergraduates at the School of Mines. But if you are one, you should take one of my environmental humanities courses. And otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at Shannon Menkes.
Fantastic. And we'll have that up on our show notes as well, so you guys don't have to go searching. We'll have that for you. Sean, buddy, what have you been up to?
Guys, as always, I'm doing live improv comedy in Washington, D.C. with my group Knox. You can find more information witdc.org. And I'm always on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis.
Fantastic. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at DrClawMD. You can also find me on Collider.com, Nerdist.com, and DaveTrumbore.com. If you're interested in finding out more about this show, you can do so at our Patreon page, patreon.com/SaturdayMorningCartoons. And remember, that's morning with a U. You can also find us on our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Visit us over on Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's handiwork on our Instagram page. Keep the conversation going on Facebook. And listen to our free audio podcast each and every week through YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. If you have a suggestion for, Brony Madness 2018, you can send us an email.
Knock it off.
SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. That's going to wrap it up for Mecha March Madness. Gundam Wing bringing it home for the kids. Nicely done. I'm going to send Sean a box set for his birthday.
Of Gundam?
No, I'm not going to do that. So, you want to tease what we got coming up next month? We got another theme month that might just push you over the edge.
One step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break. It's going to make me just listen to Linkin Park all month. It's not the worst. They have a greatest hits album out. I don't know if that's possible, but I love it. I love the balls that they have. We're actually gonna stay on sort of the anime kick,
for better or worse,
throughout all of April. We are gonna be doing an anime April, and so will we or won't we be talking about some of your favorite series? And so tune in next week, and we will be able to. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point.
Now, Sean doesn't know this, listeners, but just between you and me, we're just watching a different episode of Gundam Wing every
God
week.
Damn it. You fucker.
Thank you guys so much for listening and joining us for Mecha March Madness. And thank you again to Shannon for joining us as well. Hope to have you back another time.
Guys.
Again, thanks for listening. We will see you next time in April. Take care.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.